Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this is just a quick preview for next weekend's main event. David Benavidez versus Anthony Yarde. Benavidez, of course, defending his WBC light heavyweight title. I know he's a bit of a paper champion right now because of the circumstances in which he got that belt, but the reality is he does hold that belt, and yeah, he's defending against two-time world title challenger Anthony Yarde. Now, what do I think about this fight? I think it's decent, I think it's reasonable. From a stylistic perspective, I think it will work out to be an entertaining fight. A fight in which, listen, we're all making Benavidez a favourite, and rightfully so. You know, he's coming off some good form. Just going to light heavyweight, he's kind of making a name for himself there. Yarde, on the other hand, you know, he's came up short at world level, and recent performances from Yarde haven't been amazing. It's got to be said. So listen, man, Benavidez is the rightful favourite and a pretty big favourite, but I still think Yarde has things in there that make him live or potentially live. And yeah, the main thing for me is I think this one's going to be fun to watch, as long as it lasts. And overall, the card in general is really good. It's possible I might do another live commentary for this card because of how stacked it is. We'll see. And I'll try and do some previews going into this fight week in regards to the other fights: Jesse Rodriguez versus Fernando Martinez, Brian Norman versus Devin Haney, etc. But Yarde versus Benavidez, or Benavidez versus Yarde. For me, this fight in regards to Benavidez is more so about concentration and staying on his P's and Q's. Anthony Yarde is a guy who is quick-handed, likes to throw single punches, single counters ideally, generates speed and snap on those punches with power. We know that. Yarde is a good athlete, and you can tell that he's one of those fighters that's drilled certain techniques in the gym. It looks like he extensively drills a lot of little combos, counters. And of course, he tries to replicate that in fights. The issue with that, I think, for Anthony Yarde is, I think it's made him a very reactionary fighter. I don't think Yarde is necessarily great at when it comes to pushing the pace or you know, using his initiative on making a fight go to where he would like. I think he's always way too reliant on what his opponent is doing in regards to giving him the openings, more so than him actually creating them himself. But Yarde in this fight, the hand speed and the power makes him live. Benavidez, as we know, is a guy who is aggressive. He likes to put punches in bunches. He'll mix his attack from body to head, and at times, you know, he'll take risks in doing that. I do think Benavidez's defense is underrated. I think he's got a good high guard, a pretty good high guard, pretty tight, nice and compact, and he blocks shots quite well, does Benavidez, and I think his guard's got better over the years. The issue with Benavidez's defense is his defense is pretty good when he's not throwing punches, but Benavidez, he starts to come undone a little bit when he opens up. That's when he is open. He'll drop his lead hand when he throws combinations. Sometimes he'll bring it back up to his chin too slow. He comes in square on when he throws combos as well, head on center line. Defensively, when he opens up, that's when the openings are there with Benavidez. And ultimately, Yarde, I think in this fight, is about being brave. It's about taking risk. And it's about punching with Benavidez when Benavidez does open up. Of course, you know, in the interim, Yarde needs to be trying to fire that jab, maybe trying to fire that looping right hand around the guard of Benavidez, maybe picking single shots to the body. I think working the body of Benavidez, it would be a beneficial strategy in this fight for Yarde. Although Benavidez, like I say, he does actually cover his body up quite well, but the straight to the body from Yarde could be a good shot for him. But I think Yarde in this bout needs to be picking away with his jab and looking for the singles, but he needs to be waiting for the opportunities when Benavidez really tries to go through the gears. You know, when Benavidez really opens up with those 5, 6, 7 punch salvos. In those moments, Yarde has to be brave, I think, and actually punch with Benavidez. Look for the uppercut through the middle. I think would be a key shot for Anthony Yarde, because a lot of Benavidez's combinations they tend to be wide punches, and he's quite open when he throws those wide punches. He really opens his body up, standing square on, like I said, and the uppercut through the middle. If Yarde can time that while Benavidez is throwing, that could be a shot for Yarde. And I think ultimately that's where this fight is for Yarde. I think he needs to land a perfect shot. He needs to be hurting Benavidez, and to do that, I think he stands his best chance of firing with Benavidez. Because although, Yarde can be a little bit elusive, and, maybe he might give Benavidez a little trouble trying to box him, but I don't think that's going to be sustainable for him. I think overall, when not much is happening, it's going to be Benavidez who's outworking Yarde. And I have a hard time seeing Yarde just like outboxing Benavidez over 12 and playing it safe, etc. I think for this one, the way Yarde could win, or the only way I think Yarde wins, is if he actually is able to hurt Benavidez. Whether he then stops him or not is unknown. But for me, Yarde in this bout needs to punch with Benavidez. It really is that simple. I think Yarde can do that. I think Yarde has the speed to do that. Whether his power will affect Benavidez, time will tell. That's another question mark about Benavidez at light heavyweight. Because, Benavidez, he's only had, a couple of fights at light heavyweight, I believe. 2 fights, which was David Morrell and Alexander Vodzik. The Vodzik fight was interesting because Benavidez was outboxing Vodzik pretty early on, pretty comfortably. Vodzik wasn't really doing much. Second half of the fight, though, Benavidez slowed down and Vodzik came back into it, but Vodzik was boxing way too much. He wasn't throwing punches in anger against Benavidez, so he didn't really test Benavidez's chin. David Morrell did. He of course dropped Benavidez. Benavidez wasn't hurt on the knockdown, but he did hurt Benavidez in another instance in that fight. So I do wonder, has Yarde got the speed and power to actually test that chin of Benavidez? Because although Benavidez has had 2 fights in the weight class, I don't think his chin's been sufficiently tested for us to know, this guy's actually got a granite chin at 75. Benavidez ate the shots up at 168, but he was fighting guys who are much smaller. And, that's a question mark I still have over Benavidez. I'm pretty convinced he's got a decent chin, but it's how decent. And Yarde needs to answer or ask that question, as far as I'm concerned. Benavidez in this fight, again, he needs to be more mindful, I think, especially in the first sort of half of this fight, in regards to picking his spots and not opening up too much, because, again, that will give Yarde the opportunity to counter in the pocket. Because Yarde is pretty astute in the pocket at landing short, hard punches. So for me, I actually think Benavidez straight punch combinations in this fight, then back out and circle away, would be his best strategy behind that high guard. Keep it long, and fire those 1-2-3s, those 1-2-1s or those 1-2-1-2s. Fire those shots from the outside, and make Yarde actually chase the fight. I know Benavidez has the reputation of being the aggressor usually in fights, but I actually think he could make Yarde lead. By firing those quick straight long punches, circling out, resetting, make Yarde chase the fight. He's not comfortable chasing a fight. He's not comfortable at punching on the front foot. He doesn't generate his power that way, Anthony Yarde. He can't generate the same power while he's moving forwards. He needs to be stationary with you coming onto him, or you punching with him in the pocket kind of thing. So I actually wouldn't be averse to seeing Benavidez box more in this fight. I think it's a viable strategy. Yarde always struggles with a consistent jab. We saw that against Kovalev. We saw that against Beterbiev. We even saw that in the both the first and second Lyndon Arthur fights. And even Yarde's fight against that random Lithuanian or Latvian guy, Vilkans, struggled with Vilkans' jab. I think Benavidez's best strategy in this fight is not to do the usual high guard, try and walk a guy down, but maybe box a bit more. Keep a high guard, but keep it at range, keep it with straight punches, and especially in the first half of this fight when Yarde is like fresh. But as the fight goes on into the second half, we know Yarde does flag. And at that stage, then maybe we can see Benavidez kind of revert and be a bit more aggressive, try to step onto the gas and push the pace on Yarde, and maybe even try and force a late stoppage. I think Yarde is dangerous for the first 5-6 rounds in this bout, just because of his speed and power, and because we still don't really know how good Benavidez's chin is at 75. But as long as Benavidez navigates those rounds sensibly, I think he'll have a pretty comfortable second half of this fight, and I think he then really does take over. My prediction for this fight is Benavidez by late stoppage, like rounds 10 to 12, accumulation, the usual type of Benavidez stoppage when he does get them. I think that's going to be the case in this fight. I think Yarde might have a couple of good moments early on with single punches, couple of oohs and ahs, but overall Benavidez to me has improved as a fighter, I think, in the recent years. I think he's obviously more fresh, more hungry, I would say, and yeah, I just think he's in a better place than Yarde right now. I think he's a more put together fighter, a more versatile fighter, a more offensively gifted fighter, a fitter fighter, better punch output. I can't see Benavidez slipping up here. You know, Yarde has attributes that make him live for a little bit, in my opinion. But yeah, I can only see Benavidez winning this fight. I could see it going to points, to be fair, but I'm going to go with a Benavidez late stoppage. Late stoppage for Benavidez, accumulation. But I still think it's a decent fight. I still think it's going to be fun to watch. I think it's a sensible fight to make right now because Bivol is injured, Beterbiev is injured. You know, there were talks about those two guys facing off. That leaves Benavidez kind of searching around for an opponent, and you know, Yarde is one of the better guys available right now. You know, they tried to get Callum Smith. Callum Smith turned down that fight against Benavidez. Callum Smith would have been better, but you know, Yarde is fair enough. You know, considering the landscape right now, I think it's fair enough. But yeah, I like the fight, like I said. Anyway, share your thoughts below. Beanie Guy Delboy, peace.